The storm roared over the copper roofs of Vellamont, manor when the two men sealed the pact that would forever alter the fate of their families. Lord Augustus Vellamont, the railway magnate, had everything money could buy except self-control, and Lord Lucien d'Arbanville, heir to a French lineage darkened by scandals, knew all too well the art of manipulation. They had been playing cards for hours. Expensive wine glasses empty, eyes bloodshot from exhaustion and greed. Augustus was at a disadvantage, yet refused to accept defeat. Lucien proposed one final round, the most insane bet of all. If Augustus won, he would gain the d'Arbanville lands in Brittany. But if he lost, he would surrender his only son, Elijah Vellamont, as a servant to House d'Arbanville for an indefinite amount of time. Elijah, only 18, raised in luxury, would be treated like a slave, not a guest. Augustus laughed, played his cards, and lost. He signed the deal in blood. And so, Elijah was taken the next morning to d'Arbanville Castle, perched atop a cliff where the sea screamed against the rocks and the wind whispered ancient secrets. Lucien offered no explanation as to what he would do with the boy, only locked him in a forgotten wing of the castle where servants dared not enter and time itself seemed frozen. Elijah couldn't comprehend how his father had allowed this. He felt betrayed, abandoned, caged like an animal. But no one had told him that the castle hid far more than damp walls and eerie echoes. Whispers floated through the halls at night. Footsteps left no trace. Mirrors reflected things that had not yet happened. And there was an unseen presence watching him from the moment he stepped through the gates. On the third day, he met Isabelle D'Arbanville, the Lord's daughter. The girl never seen in daylight, who wore old-fashioned dresses and spoke as if she had lived for 100 years, though she appeared no older than 20. Isabelle appeared in the library, where Elijah had been assigned to clean the books. She emerged from the shadows, her gray eyes locked on him, and simply said, "You're not supposed to be here." Elijah, prideful, replied that he had no choice, and she only smiled as if she knew something he didn't. From then on, she began visiting him in secret. At night, she would appear with a lantern, asking strange questions about his childhood, his dreams, whether he believed in souls that could never find rest. She seemed enchanted by him, and he by her. Though something in her presence sent shivers down his spine, shivers he couldn't tell were from fear or fascination. One night, she led him to the forbidden wing of the castle, where portraits covered in veils showed men identical to Lucien, as if time had not touched them. Elijah asked who they were, and Isabelle replied, "My father." In many lives. He thought it was a joke, until he saw a portrait of her dated 1842, and she looked exactly the same. That's when everything began to unravel. From that moment, things began to unravel quickly. Lucien appeared more often, assigning Elijah impossible tasks, tending a garden no one could find, cleaning corridors that vanished the next day, organizing books that reappeared in different languages by morning. Elijah obeyed, each time questioning reality, but what tethered him to the nightmare was not fear, it was Isabelle. They began meeting every night in hidden corners, the attic, forgotten towers, dusty ballrooms echoing with distant laughter that had long since died. She spoke of past lives, of ancient pacts, of a curse binding her family to the castle for eternity. He listened but didn't believe until one night, while reaching for her hand, his fingers burned with an icy sting that shot through his arm. And she screamed. "You can't touch me yet," she said, breathless. "Yet?" he asked, horrified. Isabelle wept. "Because if you do, too soon, it all begins again." Elijah demanded answers. That night, she revealed everything. Centuries ago, a d'Arbanville ancestor made a deal with a forgotten entity. In exchange for eternal power and wealth, he was to offer one innocent soul per generation. The soul had to be surrendered willingly by someone who loved them. That was the condition. That was why Augustus made the bet. Augustus knew. He handed over his son to save his own legacy. Elijah was the next offering. Isabelle, a product of a bloodline that had stopped aging, was the guardian of the curse, a soul cursed to live hundreds of lives, bound to the castle, watching the cycle repeat. But something had changed. She had fallen in love with Elijah, and now everything was at risk. If she saved him, the curse would turn on her. If she let him die, the castle would be safe for another 100 years. Elijah refused to accept his fate. He began exploring the castle by day, searching for a way out, a way to end it all. He discovered a hidden door beneath the altar in the abandoned chapel, where he found the records pages and pages of names. All servants delivered like him. None had survived past 30 days. He had 5 left. He confronted Lucian. The Lord smiled coldly and said, "You're not the first, but you can be the last if you agree." Elijah was locked in the dungeons, where his dreams became torment. He saw Isabelle burning, the castle swallowed by the sea, himself reliving the same nightmare again and again. Until one night, Isabelle came for him. She opened the cell door and whispered, "We have to go, now." They fled through the underground tunnels, damp and stinking of death, chased by shadows Elijah couldn't see but could feel pressing in. As they reached the forest, Isabelle collapsed. It's starting. They know. A thunder cracked the sky. The castle behind them seemed to shudder like a living thing. A darkness followed them, something that walked without a body, made of whispers and hunger. Isabelle begged him to run, to save himself, but Elijah refused. "If I kiss you," she said, barely able to breathe, "it breaks the cycle. But I die." Elijah looked into her eyes, those ancient, sorrowful eyes that had seen centuries pass, and said, "Then I die with you." The shadow surged forward, a swirling mass of smoke and screams, rising from the ground like a storm given form. Elijah stepped in front of Isabelle, fists clenched, heart pounding, prepared to face it with nothing but defiance. The moment the shadow touched him, he felt it all, the agony of generations, the pain of every soul sacrificed before him, the betrayal, the silence, the loneliness, the fire, the salt of tears shed by forgotten names. He screamed, not in fear, but in rage. Isabelle called his name. She ran to him. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him and kissed him. The world stopped. Time shattered like glass. The shadow let out a howl so piercing it split the sky. The earth trembled. Light burst from Elijah's chest, spreading like wildfire across the forest, across the mountains, into the sea. The darkness was consumed. Silence fell. Isabelle collapsed. Lifeless, Elijah held her, sobbing, screaming her name into the wind that no longer whispered curses but carried peace. Hours passed. The first light of morning touched the trees, and as the sun rose, something changed. Isabelle stirred. Her breath returned, her eyes opened, and for the first time in her many lives, she was human. The pact was broken. The curse ended. The castle, once an eternal prison, crumbled into the cliffs stone by stone, until nothing remained but sea mist. Elijah D'Arbanville vanished without a trace, his fate unknown, his lineage dissolved. Elijah and Isabelle walked away from the ruins, not looking back. Hand in hand, they wandered into the world, free at last. As they stepped into the sunlight, Elijah noticed a single rose blooming from the dirt where Isabelle had fallen. A rose with petals like fire and frost, born from love that defied death. And they knew the nightmare had ended, not with blood, but with choice, with sacrifice, with the kind of love that rewrites destiny. The wind carried their laughter. The waves sang for them. And far behind, where the castle once stood, the land healed, no longer cursed, no longer haunted, only remembered.